People say Nebraska's got a top 5 defensive coordinator nationally. The stats say their total D should rank inside the top 20, but less than 30 days from today, we'll find out how good they really are. Defense wasn't always an issue at Nebraska, but in the few years before Rule took over, they rarely lived up to the standard. It only took Tony White one offseason to fix that, and some people, not me, but some people claim they only look good because they played bad offenses, and I think they took that to heart. Getting better on offense was a must, but defense wins championships. So today, I'll let you know what I think the 2 deep looks like for week 1. We'll look at the 3 most important games on this schedule, and I'll give you my prediction for the last 5 single digits. But what's up, guys? I'm Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Crazed. If you're a fan of Nebraska or the Big Ten, hit the subscribe button now so you don't miss any of my in-season content. And if you want me to drop my record prediction video, hit the like button and help us get to 1,000. But now, let's get into it.
He's hit and he's taking a shot downfield, wide open end zone, caught, touchdown.
After 6.5 months waiting for it to come back, we've officially made it to football season. Nebraska started fall camp this week, the roster's been updated with all the new numbers, and now the updates we get from practice are going to give us a pretty clear picture for what to expect come Utep week. I dropped my depth chart prediction video for the offense, and I called out some of the most important pieces on that side, but we didn't get into the single digits yet. And even though half of them are already taken, there are 5 out there that are still up for grabs. The last few are going to be voted on by players based on leadership and performance, but I've got my own list for who I think is going to get them. And it starts with Marquise Buford Jr., who's had 2 major knee injuries, but started 13 of the last 15 games he played in. During the last Chasing 3 episode, they got into his backstory and he shared how bad he wants to win. The team talked about how they rallied behind him after he went down in that Wisconsin game in 2022. And as a player, he's one of the most physical guys on the entire D. So if he doesn't get one, I'm going to be shocked. Next is Thomas Fidone, another guy who's off multiple injuries, proved he's a guaranteed starter, and most importantly, wants to bring the Nebraska brand back to where it should be. I don't know if he's as outgoing as guys like Buford or Gifford, but he's extremely competitive. He's working hard to be one of the best tight ends in the Big Ten, and I'll be surprised if he isn't in the top 5 once they go to vote. Tommy Hill's made a complete 180. Extreme expectations, to struggling when he got his chance, to thinking he might need to leave, to sticking it out and finishing the season as one of the best corners in the entire conference, even though he only started 7 games. Leadership is doing things the right way. It's fighting through adversity when the odds are stacked against you. It's setting a standard for the guys around you to live up to, and Tommy Hill checks all of those boxes. Jamari Butler's a leader on a D-line that already has 0-9 with Nash and Ty, and he had his moments of doubts before Rule took over, but once Tony White and Terrence Knighton got to him, he led the team in tackles for loss and sacks. 3 single digits on a line that could be one of the best in the country would be a beautiful sight. And last, I'm going with Dylan Raiola because it feels like this story's already been written. Dad's name on the stadium, uncle's a coach on the offense, the 5-star destined to be a first-round draft pick and lead Nebraska back to national relevancy. I wouldn't be surprised to see him vote on somebody who's been around the program longer, but it's really hard to bet against the chosen one. Moving on to the lineup prediction, and I don't think this one's as tough to call as the offense, but the DB room is a little challenging, so we're going to start there. At safety, I'm going with Buford and Hartzog as the first 2, but if Deshaun Singleton's 100% healthy and ready to start now that he's back from injury, one of those first 2 might take the starting job at corner since these are 3 of the most proven and best DBs right after Tommy Hill and Isaac Gifford. Hartzog started 15 games at corner and only 3 at safety, but the reason they moved him was because Singleton got hurt and they needed more support in that room. So if Singleton is ready to go, he's probably the first one to take that corner job back. Now that first corner spot goes to Tommy Hill, who finished with 26 tackles, 9 breakups, and 4 picks in just 7 starts. But that second spot's a tough call because you've got Syer Wright, who transferred in from USC, Jeremiah Charles, who's only played in 2 games, and after him, there's even more in experience. Bly Hill's going to be back by the end of September, but in the meantime, they got to roll with somebody who we could call the best man for the job since they play one of the most explosive offenses in the country week 2. Wright's a freak athlete and he started 15 games at USC, but he's learning to play in a new defense. And if he's not ready after one fall camp, Hartzog or Buford might have to step in since they've got more experience in the 3-3-5. I know Wright's going to play. It's just how much is it going to happen right out the gate? The Rovers' Isaac Gifford, who's an undisputed team leader with NFL potential, 22 starts under his belt, and a top 3 finisher in terms of total tackles the last 2 seasons. This is his 5th year, and he's one of the most experienced and proven players on the entire team. So if he does sub out, the only 2 I'd expect to hold that spot down are Singleton or Buford, who are both just as physical and tackle like their linebackers. The first inside linebacker spot is led by Javen Wright, who's one of the most underrated guys on the whole D. He's 6'5". He looks like Taylor Mays, and if you don't know who that is, go look him up. He only started 1 game last year, but he still finished second on the team with 51 tackles off the bench. And after 2 seasons playing behind Reimer and Henrich, he's finally getting his chance to shine. A 6'5" linebacker who can run with receivers is the type of athlete Nebraska's been trying to recruit. Rule talks about needing athletes who can do it all, and Javen's the perfect example of somebody who can play up in run support or drop back to defend the pass. Bayer had 24 tackles and 3 for loss in his first year getting playing time, so he'll be in that rotation too. But one of the most hyped up and ready to play freshmen in the class is Vincent Shavers, so there's a lot of competition for playing time in that spot. Next to right is John Bullock, who's another former DB that switched over to linebacker and had a really strong year 1 with 50 tackles, 2 picks, and a forced fumble. Stephon Thompson and Vince Genatone both transferred in, but I don't think we see more than 5 get significant playing time, so I'll put Thompson in the top 3 based on how well he did at Syracuse. In 36 games, he made 169 tackles, 20 for loss, 10.5 sacks, and forced 4 fumbles. Now, it was weaker competition, but the same defense. So even though he hasn't been talked about much this offseason, there's serious potential with Thompson. Jack's kind of a hybrid DN linebacker position, and I don't think there's a true starter at this spot. I think if they need more run support, MJ Sherman's the bigger body they use at defensive end. And if they want a pass rusher with long arms or somebody who can double as a pass coverage backer, Princeville plays. If we're just basing it on who was more productive in terms of stats, MJ finished with 16 tackles and 1.5 for loss versus Princeville, who had 22 with 4.5 for loss. The nose is all Nash Hutmacher, who returns after he had 40 tackles, 8 for a loss, and 4.5 sacks. He was the disruptor on the line, and even if he couldn't make the play because they were double teaming him, he was the reason that Reimer, Henrich, or Jamari Butler was making a play in the backfield. Van Poppel backed him up last year, and he played in 11 games as a true freshman, but now that he's had a year to put on muscle, he'll get more opportunities to rotate and give Nash a break. Defensive end's another spot that's stacked with young talent, but it starts with Ty Robinson, who's going into year 4 as a starter. He's a preseason All-Big Ten pick, and he should get taken in the draft. But Cam Lenhart looked really good as a true freshman, and he had 16 tackles, 5 for a loss, and 3 sacks. Now, Robinson's the obvious leader, but Lenhart's a freak athlete with an even higher ceiling, and I think Tony White's going to have a really hard time keeping him off the field. Jamari Butler's going to hold down the other side after he broke out with 34 tackles, 8.5 for loss, and 5.5 sacks. But James Williams looked really good in the 4 games he played, and fans were shocked to see that the DNs went so deep that a guy who was redshirting looked like he was ready to be the starter. Once again, it's a clear sign that tells us this staff is building a roster and not just a starting lineup. The kicker conversation has been interesting because Alvano struggled with mid-range as a freshman. He missed short field goals in the spring game, and now we hear that he's out for part of fall camp, recovering from a groin surgery. Now, I know for most position groups, you'd have a competition, but I'm guessing all the kickers have similar range in practice, and it really comes down to who's the best when it matters, whether that's in the wind or when there's real pressure or a game on the line. So I'm going to assume Alvano keeps the job, but if he's still inconsistent, I'm going to guess Rule's going to pull the plug and he's going to make a change during the season. Ja'Cory Barney's an obvious candidate to return kickoffs, but the other day, Ed Foley mentioned IGC as one of the punt returners, and for that spot, he makes perfect sense. I'm not sure what his role is going to be in the receiver room since it's so deep, but after his ACL rehab, he posted these numbers on Twitter. 198 pounds, 500-pound squat, 370-pound bench, 305 power clean, and 21-mile-an-hour GPS, which is as fast as some of the top receivers in the NFL. Another option to return kicks is Ramir, since he's going to split time at running back, and he's been a kick returner before. But with as much speed as they have back there, it's about time we see Nebraska take one all the way. And before I get to my 3 most important games of this season, I want to shout out the Character Chronicles for sponsoring today's show. And I actually just got done watching a highlight video he released a couple days ago where he listed his top 10 plays from last season, which you should definitely check out. So if you search Character Chronicles in YouTube, or you head down to the link in my description, that'll get you there. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of Adam's preseason predictions later this month. Now let's talk about the 3 most important games of 2024, and it starts week 2 with Colorado. You've got multiple reasons why this one's massive. First off, it's a rivalry game against Colorado, who's on a 3-game win streak against Nebraska. Second, it's at home at night, and if you can't win in that spot, it's going to be a major blow to their confidence. And third, it's a primetime game against primetime and 2 of the best players in college football. Beat Colorado, and the sky's the limit. Lose, and expectations go from Big Ten contender to bowl game hopefuls. I think there's an argument here to say that this is the most important game for Nebraska football since Michigan in 2021. Week 5, they go to Purdue, and this one's tough because it's a morning game against a team they crushed last season, and although their win expectations are pretty low, they're fully capable of beating Nebraska at home like they have so many times before. It's a week after their Big Ten opener, a week before a much tougher game against Rutgers, and if this Nebraska team does have 8 or 9 wins in them, to get there, they've got to avoid losing games that don't feel as important. Week 13 is at home against Wisconsin, and it's time to end this BS streak. It should have been over 2 years ago. Not finishing last season was a disgrace, but this time around, they'll need a win on Senior Day to give them a confidence boost before they finish on the road at Iowa. Because there's a world where Nebraska's fighting for a 3rd or 4th playoff spot, but losing to Wisconsin at home would absolutely take them out of that conversation. I got to stop there though, because I'm going to have all my thoughts in my next video where I break down the schedule and I tell you how I think things play out for this season. But until then, I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comments below. Does the returning production on defense make you think they'll improve on what they started, or do teams knowing how to prepare for them make this season harder? Who's your pick to have the strongest season on the D-line? And which of these DBs earns the starting corner spot opposite Tommy Hill? I'm going to hope Wright's ready to play day 1, but until I know for sure, I've got to assume it'll be somebody more proven until Bly Hill's back in the mix. But that's all I've got for the day. So until next time, thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Go Big Red.